The Revd Kenneth G Howcroft, Chair of the Marriage and Relationships Task Group, answers questions ahead of its report to the 2018 Methodist Conference. Why has the draft statement been delayed?
We really wanted to bring a statement this year, which is what we were set up to do, although that was always going to be a tall order, because in order to bring a statement this year, you have to get it into the conference agenda, which means it has to be ready in its final form by the end of March, which means you have to have written it before Christmas in order to consult with the Faith and Order Committee about it, which means you've got 12 to 15 months at the most to do all the work. And the task group was a new group. It had to get to know each other. It had to work out how to work on these things and come up to speed about them all. There was a number of factors, including serious illness among some of its members in that time, which prevents us, and the issue itself is incredibly complicated.
What are the challenges the task group has faced with this report?
The Methodist people have been divided about some of these issues, particularly about same-sex marriage, for some time. But the task we've been given is not just about same-sex marriage, although a contentious issue. If it was only that issue, it might have been easier to bring something. But what we were asked to do was to bring something which talked about marriage in general and relationships in general, including marriage and relationships of heterosexual people. And there's a whole load of issues that people have been raising for some time, like, for example, issues of sexual intimacy and cohabitation as they apply to heterosexual couples as well as same-sex couples, which we've not talked about for a long time and which we need to get sorted out. So it is an immensely complicated thing, and what we've been asked to produce is a draft statement rather than just a report. And a draft statement on this is the highest authority that the Methodist Church gives to anything. And it has to be able to last for about 10 years. It needs to stand scrutiny alongside things other churches have produced, and it needs to carry the Methodist people along with it. And we need to discern what God is saying to us at this time. And those are immensely weighty tasks. It's exciting dealing with them. It's a challenge, an opportunity dealing with them, but it can't be done quickly.
What is the task group asking the conference to do?
We're bringing an interim report to conference where we're explaining the process, where we're up to, and what we're recommending for the process from here on. We're raising some of the issues that we have been grappling with, that we have discovered as we go into this matter, and we're going to ask the conference in a series of workshops to work on various of those issues. One of them is about sexual intimacy and cohabitation. Another is about the link between marriage as understood under the law of the land and the role of the courts and the registry offices in that on the one hand, and the role of the church and its understanding of what God might be doing in a marriage service on the other, how those two things have fitted together and how they might fit together in future. And the third is about the particular issue of same-sex marriage, and if the church were to continue not to accept same-sex marriage within its services, what that would do about the fact that we've also said that we will not take any action about members or ministers who enter a civil partnership or a same-sex marriage legally, and yet we're not going to be providing any religious services for those things. We're living in an slightly unhappy compromise about that at the moment. What will we do about that in the future? Or if the church were to accept the possibility of same-sex marriage in its services, what we would do about those ministers and possibly those local churches which felt that out of conscience they weren't able to take part in such things, and whether, if we allow those conscience clauses, what that would do to connectionalism. These are open questions that we want the conference to look at in workshops, and we will listen very hard to the answers to those things. We also want the wider church to be discussing them as well, so the church is starting to think about things before we bring our draft statement next year. When we bring the draft statement in 2019, we're proposing that that then has a one-year consultation process rather than a two-year consultation process, because we think that if we give notice of that now, if the conference gives notice of that now, districts and circuits and local churches can get their meetings for consultation set up in advance within the timetable, and it means we would arrive at the final conclusion of this in 2020, which is what was expected when we were set off. So rather than a two-year consultation process in the connection from 2018 to 2020, it would be a consultation from 2019 to 2020, but we have this year from 28 to 2019 where the connection can start to look at all the issues.
A longer interview with the Revd Kenneth G Howcroft on the work of the task group can be downloaded as a podcast from methodist.org.uk/podcasts. Full details of the Methodist Conference can be found at methodist.org.uk/conference.